Hey, welcome back guys, JC here, and I have another AWK210 build. You're probably wondering, JC, why are you doing another AWK210 build? You just did one last week or the week before. That is correct, but this one is actually going to be much different. That's why I'm making this separate video. I have gone ahead and mounted the motors and soldered them to the ESCs just to cut down on the time of this video, but just quickly explain what I've done so far. Well, first let me say, all the parts that I'm using, you can find links to those parts in the description below. I will also add other videos that tie into this build. For motors, I'm using the Ready-Made RC rifle motors. You've heard me talking about this all the time lately because these motors are just flat out awesome. My most favorite motors of all time. I will leave a link to this motor review in the description. The motors do come with 6mm long bolts, but I'm using Ready-Made RC's 3D printed TPU motor mounts to soft mount my motors. I would recommend doing this either way, but definitely if you're using the Raceflight Revolt flight controller because it has the most sensitive gyro of all flight controllers. So you want to get rid of as much vibrations as you can. Point being, if you do choose to use these motor mounts to soft mount your motors, you will need longer bolts. So instead of 6mm long bolts, you will need 8mm long bolts. Once again, look in the description. I'll have a link to those. I also recommend removing the screw that holds the bell onto the motors and placing blue Loctite on that screw and then reinstalling it. Whenever you reinstall it, don't tighten it too much because you don't want too much pressure on the bearings because that could potentially damage the bearings or shorten their lifespan. I also put blue Loctite on all of these bolts, the motor bolts. The ESCs are the ZTW30a ESCs. And they are also capable of being used with D-Shot. You do have to remove the signal capacitor. I'm going to leave you a link to my review of these ESCs. Also, in that review, I show you the location of the signal capacitor and how to remove it, so that should save you some time. Other than that, you just need to upgrade your version of firmware on the ESCs to the newest version of BLHeli firmware, and then they are completely D-Shot ready. I placed two pieces of this foam mounting tape underneath each ESC. I do this because it acts as a cushion. That way in crashes, it's not going to break off any capacitors or anything like that. Also, this keeps, if you just use heat shrink around the ESCs, sometimes it wears holes in the bottom, and once an electronic component touches the carbon fiber does conduct electricity, and that is what will fry your ESC. I just have one strip of electrical tape on each ESC holding it in place. I basically put my ESC exactly where I want it, and then doing this will allow me to get the lengths of wires exactly how long I want them to make them super clean looking. And this also will allow me to get the exact measurements for these wires as well. So now it's time to install the PDB. I chose to go with the Strix PDB, and the reason I'm using this is because it has a 2 amp 5 volt voltage regulator and a 1 amp 12 volt voltage regulator. I don't necessarily need the 12 volt regulator, but because I am using the Revolt flight controller, it doesn't have a built-in regulator, so I need that 5 volt. If you do choose to use a flight controller that has a regulator built in, then because you're using this frame, I would assume you're using the Ready-Made RC Cricket video transmitters. You don't need a voltage regulator for that because they can accept from 20 volts up to 28 volts depending on which model you have. It also kicks out 5 volts from the video transmitter to your camera, so you don't need a regulator for that either. So basically you don't need any regulators at all. In that case, I would recommend the Hellbender PDB, which is a super basic and simple PDB, keeps everything low profile and very clean, and this is actually what I use on all my builds with those types of flight controllers. As always, I take two pieces of electrical tape and run it on the back side, and then just place it on something flat that you don't mind cutting up. Then I use an X-Acto knife to cut off the excess, and that will cover the bottom side of my PDB in electrical tape, because sometimes the solder can flow through those tiny little holes, and if it contacts your carbon fiber frame, then something's going to fry. And I also punch 4 little holes so my bolts can go through. Okay, got the ESCs wired up. One thing I like about this PDB is your main battery leads can go either on the bottom, well, I should say you can face it this way to where your ESCs are going top and bottom, or you have another set of main battery leads here so you can do your ESC wires on the left and right. Also like how you have the 12 volt and 5 volt regulator pads on both sides. This frame kit does include 4 of these standoffs, but they're not threaded. You can use those, but instead I used 6mm standoffs that threads into these bolts, and that's going to keep the bolts held in place a little bit better. I feel a little bit more confident using it that way. So now I'm just going to solder up some scrap wires to the 5V positive and negative on the regulator, and then that way I can run that to my Raceflight Revolt. Okay, so from the 5V regulator, I've got the power and ground going to the Raceflight Revolt to power it. I also have the full voltage of the battery going from this battery pad here. Let me zoom in for you guys. Full voltage of the battery coming from this pad, which is going to go to the volt pad on the Raceflight. This will give me voltage monitoring. At the time of me recording this video, the Raceflight 1 project is not finished. There's still, the firmware and the configurator both are still in the beta testing. So I'm not going to completely cover everything about this Raceflight Revolt in this video. This video is really just showing you what parts that I'm using. But once they do completely finish it and release it to the general public, then expect to see a complete Raceflight Revolt video series. I just don't want to make any videos on it right now because I know things are still changing, and that means I would have to delete those videos and redo them all over again. So now with these grommets, which are great by the way because it's going to further reduce vibrations getting into the gyro, you can just pop that right on and then take some nuts, screw it right on top. I'm not going to do that just yet because I still have to wire in my video transmitter and camera, so I'll get to that later. I'm just going to leave this here for now. At this point I'm going to go ahead and set up my video transmitter. On the last AWK210 build, I used the Cricket 600mW video transmitter, which I absolutely love. It's great for when I'm freestyling by myself. The only problem is, often I like racing with my friends or just horsing around with my friends, all of us flying at the same time. And you can't do that with everyone running 600mW video transmitters. So that's why this time I went with the Pro version, because with this it comes with an additional switch and you can choose between 25, 200, and 600mW. To go with the Cricket Pro, because the buttons are in different locations, there is a different top plate, so I got that to go along with it. So here it is, all nice and fancy. Regardless of which video transmitter you use, either the Pro or the normal one with the SMA connector, I highly recommend placing some type of extension in this back hole on your top plate. That's just another reason why I love the AWK210 and the Hellbender frames both, because with it mounted like that, I have never broken a video transmitter or the SMA connector off a video transmitter. With the video transmitter mounted to the top plate, it really just can't get damaged. And then like the transmitter itself, but even the SMA connector can't get damaged if you have this screwed into the top plate. If you choose not to use the Pro Cricket video transmitter and you use the one with the SMA connector, I do have a video showing you how to make your own just like this, and that just screws in place right there, and there you go, it works perfect. Now with the Pro version, I think this extension is a little too long for my liking. I mean, you can use it, you can just bolt it in place, wrap this around and screw this in place, but the extension is going to be hanging off, so I'm going to shorten it up a little bit. Thankfully half the work is already done for me, so I just have to take this case apart, desolder it, shorten the cable, and solder it back on. I mean, there's more to it than that. Like I said, just watch the other video and I explain the difference between the signal wires and the shielding wires and where everything needs to go. Okay, so here's my video transmitter with the extension shortened. One thing I do want to mention though is Ready-Made RC is really good about their like warranties and returns, but I highly doubt that they will return this if you mess something up when you do this. So if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then don't do it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, so I've got my video transmitter mounted into the top plate, and perfect. No way it's ever getting damaged. Now let's talk about the FPV camera mount and camera options. Normally I would love to use the Strix AWK210 FPV camera. I do have a review on this, look in the description. I love this camera because it's a Strix camera. This is a Strix camera mount. It's made for this mount. It fits perfectly inside this ring. There's no gaps, no nothing. Not only that, but it's in a metal case, so whenever you crash, with plastic case cameras, sometimes they do move a little bit and you have to readjust them. This one doesn't. The downside to this camera, if you watch the review on it, is it doesn't work on certain OSDs. Now there is a workaround, there is a fix. I show you the fix in the review for this camera, so if you do decide to go with this one, watch that video and I'll show you how to get your video and on-screen display no matter what type of on-screen display you are using. Now in my case, because I'm using the Revolt flight controller and it's still in the beta testing, beta phases, they have not figured out how to get on-screen displays working with its firmware. So I can't use that camera with an on-screen display. So what I will do instead for now, until they do finish the firmware, is use the RunCam Swift 2. It doesn't have much, but it does show your voltage, a timer, and your call sign. I don't care about the call sign or timer, I just want voltage, and that will make me happy. So I decided to go with this, at least for now. Like I said, until the firmware gets finished. The one that I have does have the 2.1mm lens, which will give me that really wide angle, which I love, but the size of this 2.1mm lens is a little too small because it can just go in and out of this camera mount, and whenever you crash sometimes it pops off and it does get annoying. So instead I'm going to use this GoPro 2.1mm lens. It's made for like the GoPro Hero 1 and 2. They use these style lenses that use the same thread pitch as these FPV cameras. Before I put it on though, I keep a bag of these extra locking rings. Ready-Made RC also sells these. With this FPV camera mount, there's a screw that goes in the bottom, and you screw that into your camera, and that's what holds the camera in place. Like I said, on the metal cased Uchi camera, it works great, but with these types of cameras, it's actually screwing into the threads of the lens. I just don't like doing that, so what I do is take the locking ring that came on my lens and screw it up. Put one locking ring on, and then I put another locking ring on. So the screw is actually going into one of the locking rings. I put a little bit of glue behind it to like keep it in place. And then this second locking ring is going to be the actual locking ring that will keep the lens locked in place on the camera so it doesn't come out of focus. So I'm just going to slide this lens through this FPV mount and then screw it back into the camera. Once you remove the lens from a camera, if you don't already know, you do have to refocus the lens, and of course I have a video on that as well. So we can't focus this until we get power to the camera and view our video through the goggles, so that's going to be the very last thing I do in this build, refocus the lens. Now with the other sides of this camera mount, you have a few options. So this is the front of our frame. We can mount this way and use this top hole, or we can mount it this way and use the top or the middle hole. This will give you a really nice height adjustment. You can put it exactly where you want it. Or you can even flip it around to move the camera backwards some more into the frame to give it a little bit more protection. So just play around with this and figure out where exactly you want it. So because I mounted my video transmitter to the top plate, this allowed me to put this in place and plug this harness in. And because my FPV camera is in place, I could plug that harness in. This allowed me to shorten the wires to exactly the lengths that I wanted, which gives me this. Also, because I'm using the RunCam Swift 2, it has this extra wire that needs to go to somewhere on your PDB where it's getting the full voltage of the battery, and that is what places that voltage in your OSD built into the camera. One tip I have though is if you are using any kind of on-screen display, it doesn't matter, always put all of your grounds on the PDB. It's called a common ground. So this means your ground coming from the video transmitter actually has two grounds, so put both grounds on the PDB, and then your ground coming from the camera, also put that on the PDB instead of running the ground from the camera to the ground out of the video transmitter. Now I am running power from the video transmitter on that 5 volts coming out on that separate power wire to the camera because yeah, I could power the camera off of this 5 volt regulator or 12 volt regulator or full voltage of the battery because it does accept up to like 30 something volts, 36 volts. But the Cricket video transmitter actually will filter the power. It's not as good as a separate LC filter, but it is much better than nothing. The Cricket video transmitters filter the power extremely well on their own, so that's why I'm not even using an LC filter. But anyway, now that I have all these wires soldered onto the PDB, I can mount my flight controller and then solder up these ESC signal wires. Something I forgot to mention is obviously you want to put your XT60 connector on before the flight controller. So I put that on, got my ESCs wired up. Everything is pretty much wired up now. The next thing I'm going to do is take this zip tie, and you probably can't see it, but there's two small little holes on both sides of the XT60 wires, and I will tighten this around it, and that's going to keep your XT60 from ripping off your PDB in a crash. You also have these little holes right here in your top plate. You can run your antennas through those, and I'm going to place zip ties. You'll see in a second. But before I mount this top plate on for good, I am going to take this CNC aluminum HD camera mount and mount it onto my top plate. You don't have to do this, but I will be placing blue Loctite on all my bolts on this camera mount. Okay, so now I've got the ESCs wrapped. Like I said, I took two more pieces of that foam mounting tape and placed on top of the ESCs. So in total I have two on top, two on the bottom. If you damage an ESC doing this, I will be very impressed because I've never done it. Now before you plug in a LiPo battery, you always want to take a multimeter, set it to the continuity mode, so if it beeps, you have a short somewhere. Place it on both ends of your XT60 connector, and if you get a beep right now, then you have a short somewhere. You need to remove one wire at a time, and just remove a wire, then check. Remove a wire, check, until the beeping goes away, and then you found your problem. As far as mounting your LiPo battery, the first thing I do is I took a piece of like double-sided sticky gel pad, I cut it to size, and I place it on the bottom. This way your battery will stick to this better, and in crashes this is going to keep it from ejecting, because when it ejects it could damage the battery lead or the XT60 connector and its lead. Strix also makes these battery protective plates that are perfect for 1300 mAh batteries. I also take a gel pad and cut it to size, place it on this, so now I have gel pad on between the battery on the frame side and also on the protective plate side. This frame kit comes with one of the Strix vinyl straps. You can buy these individually, and I do highly recommend them because they are vinyl. This is one of the strongest battery straps you can get, is vinyl. The strap seems really short, and there's a reason for that. You can place this in from either side and then just pull it tight. You're going to have the plastic loop right here on the frame, and that's actually normal. It's supposed to be there. Place the strap through the battery protection plate. Place your battery square in the middle to keep your center of gravity as balanced as possible. Run the strap through the other side of the battery protection plate. Run it through the other side of the frame. Pull everything tight and strap it down. And there you go, your battery is mounted. As far as props, I'm using these Strix 5x4.2x3s. Not only are these good performing props with plenty of power, but I really just like how long they last. Last weekend I put about 10 packs through my other AWK210 build and didn't change a single prop. For final weights, 627 grams, completely loaded down with a 1300 4S LiPo. Without the GoPro, 541 grams. And without the LiPo, 374 grams. That's going to do it, guys. So check the description below for links to other videos as well as every single part that I used. If you have any questions, leave it for me in the comment box. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon.